Touch the leg and welcome to Tibet This Week, a weekly news that features Tibet, His Holiness the Dalai Lama and Central Tibetan Administration. The top news of the week. His Holiness the Dalai Lama and Central Tibetan Administration offered condolences on the demise of former US Secretary of State Madeleine Albright. Sikyong Penpa Tsering presides over Conference of Education Council. Third session of 17th Tibetan Parliament-in-Exile highlights urgent environmental situation in Tibet. USAID delegation visits Dharamshala. Tibetan representatives pay homage to Tibet supporter diplomats. Representative Dr. Arya meets Chinese dissident artist Tsering. Office of Tibet, Taiwan releases book on Tibet in Chinese. 49th United Nations Human Rights Council session. UN member states call China to respect human rights in Tibet. Announcement for Tibetans visiting India on eVisa. Documentary film Never Forget Tibet premieres on 31st March. His Holiness the Dalai Lama and the Central Tibetan Administration offered condolences on the demise of Madeleine Albright, the first female US Secretary of the State. Recalling his several meetings with late former Secretary of State, His Holiness the Dalai Lama said that she has served her position with distinction, becoming an inspiration for many to follow. Sikyong Penpa Tsering of the Central Tibetan Administration and the Speaker of the Tibetan Parliament-in-Exile, Khenpo Sonam Temple, extended their heartfelt condolences on behalf of the Tibetan people on the demise of Madeleine Albright. The first female US Secretary of the State, Madeleine Albright, passed away at the age of 84 on Wednesday this week in Washington, D.C. It was during her tenure that the first Special Coordinator for Tibetan Issues at the U.S. Department of State was appointed in October 1997. Sikyong Penpa Tsering suggested a vast strategies for upgrading the education standards of the Tibetan students, ranging from animation-based learning to creating exposure to the outside world. In view of the negative impacts of China's education policy in Tibet, Sikyong recounted the efforts made to convert the Education Council into an autonomous body, giving the significance of an uninfluenced education system. Sikyong Penpa Tsering, along with Kalun for Education Department, Changra Tharlam Dolma, and Chair of the Education Council, Geshi Lhagtor, presided over the 9th Annual Conference of the Education Council and Advisory Committee held at the Kasha Secretariat on Saturday last week. The third session of the Tibetan Parliament-in-Exile commenced on Monday this week. The beginning of the session highlighted the urgent environmental situation in Tibet. The members of Parliament discussed in length ways to bring world's attention to Tibet's environment that is degrading in a fast pace. Presiding over the session, Speaker Khenpo Sonam Temple remarked on the continuing tension in Tibet, particularly the Sinicization of Tibetan language and Buddhism, and commented on the Tibetan refugees' democratic system in India under His Holiness the Dalai Lama's visionary leadership and guidance that is being appreciated by the international communities. The budget session of the 17th Tibetan Parliament-in-Exile presents and discusses the annual budget of the Central Tibetan Administration. The third session of the Tibetan Parliament-in-Exile will conclude on 31st March 2022. A delegation from the USAID comprised of Director Mark Tagenfeld and Deputy Director Poonam Smith-Sreen from the Program Office, Development Assistance Specialist Phalaka De, and Project Management Specialist Radharani Thakuria visited Central Tibetan Administration on Monday this week. The delegations on their 4-day visit to Dharamshala met with Sikyong, the Speaker and the Deputy Speaker of the Tibetan Parliament-in-Exile. The delegations also visited the offices of Central Tibetan Administration, cultural institutes, non-governmental organizations, Bir Tibetan Settlement and TCV Gopalpur School. Representative Tsering of the Office of Tibet, Latin America, paid a homage and handed over condolences letter of His Holiness the Dalai Lama, Sikyong Penpa Tsering, and the obituary adopted by the 17th Tibetan Parliament-in-Exile in honor of late Dr. Alfredo Martinez Moreno. Dr. Alfredo Moreno was the El Salvador UN delegation member who took a stand to support Tibet's place at UN by submitting a draft resolution to the UN entitled Invasion of Tibet by Foreign Forces in 1950. Representative also had a courtesy call with Deputy Johnny Wright and met longtime Tibet support member Maria Elena Sol for further advocacy of Tibet. Representative Karma Singhi of the Tibet Information Office in Australia paid his last respect to late Senator Kimberley Kitching at the funeral service in Melbourne on Monday this week. Representative read His Holiness's condolence message. Senator Kimberley Kitching was a staunch supporter and a friend of the Tibetan people. Representative of Liaison Office of His Holiness the Dalai Lama for Japan and East Asia, Dr. Tsering Arya, visited Jorenji Temple in Tokyo on Monday this week, where Chinese artist Master Tai Ken exhibited his ink painting works. Master Tai Ken has done 86 paintings of Chinese, Uyghurs, Taiwanese, Hong Kongers, Tibetans, and Mongolians who had challenged the Chinese communist regime and sacrificed their lives under the repressive regime. Representative Dr. Arya congratulated Master Tai Ken on his works and thanked him for his effort and dedication in spreading the messages of these brave people who had challenged the injustice of the Chinese communist regime. Dr. Arya presented the book CCP's 100 Atrocities in Tibet, published by Asuka Shinsha, to Master Tai Ken and Shin Harimoto, and promised to work with them for peace and democracy in China and occupied regions. The Office of Tibet, based in Taiwan, in collaboration with Human Rights Committee of the Taiwan Parliament and Taiwanese Parliamentary Group for Tibet, released a book titled Tibet Was Never Part of China in Chinese on the 63rd anniversary of the Tibetan National Uprising Day. The book was written by Professor Liu Han and was published by Kangjong Publications of the Office of Tibet, Taiwan. Several UN member states called upon China to respect the fundamental rights of Tibetan people in Tibet during the ongoing 49th session of UN Human Rights Council regular session, which is currently underway in Geneva. The delegates from the Czech Republic, Denmark, France, Germany, the Kingdom of Netherlands, Sweden, Switzerland, and the United Kingdom expressed concerns over the deteriorating situation in Tibet and called upon China to respect the fundamental rights in Tibet. Furthermore, the United States, Finland, Australia, Norway, Ireland, and others called China to respect the rights of the ethnic minorities. The member states further pressed that the High Commissioner's principal agreement to visit China and the other regions must include meaningful and unfettered access. Speaking in the second week of the session, UN Advocacy Officer of Tibet Bureau in Geneva, Kaldin Somo urged the High Commissioner to call upon China to address the underlying grievances of the Tibetan people by entering into a meaningful dialogue and urged the UN Human Rights Council to press China to give unfettered access to Tibetan regions for the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights during the visit to China and regions under its control.
We welcome the High Commissioner's announcement to visit China this year. The visit is an urgent necessity. However, no assessment of human rights violations by China can be completed without a visit to the Tibetan regions. 156 Tibetans have set themselves on fire calling for freedom. How long should Tibetans be persecuted by the Chinese government before this council acts?
In a short circulated video, Representative Nguytup Thongjung of Bureau of His Holiness the Dalai Lama, New Delhi announced Tibetans visiting India on eVisa to bring along a valid passport while entering India. The public announcement letter issued by the Bureau of His Holiness the Dalai Lama, New Delhi reads, "All Tibetans who are settled abroad and have been traveling on travel documents provided by their host countries, they should not visit India on eVisa, which is issued through an automated system. It is advised that a valid passport is at present one of the most essential requirements for entering India on eVisa. A feature-length documentary from Compassionate Films will celebrate its world premiere on 31st March in partnership with Fathom Events at 800 participating theaters across the US. The film is titled Never Forget Tibet, Dalai Lama's Untold Story. 31st March is the 63rd anniversary of His Holiness the Dalai Lama's escape from Tibet in 1959.
The situation is very difficult. Chinese forces are already reached. Now time come, leave.
It was one of the most daring escapes in history. Fighting breaks out and forces the Dalai Lama to escape the invading Chinese.
Exactly 10 o'clock, I left from Nublinga.
I had a hunch that I'm going on an important mission. My job was to go and receive him, ensure his safety, and bring him back to the plains of India safely.
Real danger is there. Danger on our life.
This is the story of what happened, told through the first-hand accounts of the Dalai Lama and Harmandir Singh.
This is the last photograph of the Dalai Lama taken in the Free Tibet.
In order to practice love, you also need practice of tolerance.
What we lack in this world is a little bit of compassion, a little bit of kindness.
With the challenges we all collectively face today, young leaders are rising up with strength, courage, and conviction, making meaningful changes and impacting the world.
Sisters and brothers, I really appreciate so many people.
The Dalai Lama is calling for more young people everywhere to rise up and to lead a new generation and to create a compassionate worldwide revolution based on love.
Anything that we do, particularly political moves, which affect so many lives, if it's not governed by some kind of an ethical value, then we have become like animals.
That is all for this week. See you next time and have a great weekend.